Set. Perfect. All right. So how is Mr. Elliot doing?
He's doing really good. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. He's doing really good.
All right. How is he doing with feeding him near the crate, in front of the crate?
So he's doing really well. I mean, I think, it's interesting, right? So we have like a traditional, like, metal crate, right, that we
Yeah.
bought originally. And then we also bought a travel crate,
Okay.
which is kind of, it has like a steel frame, but it's mostly cloth, right? And you can fold it up, that kind of style. And he is fine going in and out of that, right, with treats, with food, with everything. But the metal one, he still has some trepidation. He'll go in all the way, right, with really high reward treats, but um, and with food. But like if you with meals, he'll still keep his back paws on the
Right.
outside. With some of like with like some deli meat, he'll as long as the kind of the rewards keep coming, he'll eventually get his back feet in there. So I think it's kind of a, the travel crate is, I mean, is slightly taller and doesn't make any noise, right, when
Yeah.
he goes in and out. So I think that was there's definitely something about like kind of that metal kind of connect clinking and clanking that he finds, disturbing.
Right. Yeah. And it could be that, you know, dogs learn by association, as we talked
Yeah.
about with socialization. It could be that he had a not so great experience with a metal crate. So
Yeah.
the metal wire crate is scary. This happens often where dogs have had a bad experience with a harness and they're kind of running away and ducking because they don't want to have it put on.
Yeah.
What we do is to help them out is we get rid of that harness and we get a new one, and then we start showing them with the new one that, look, this new thing isn't scary.
Yeah.
It's the same device, it just looks different because it doesn't go on the same way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the same thing with this other crate, that soft cloth crate. um, it's still a crate, but it looks different to him because remember, dogs look at things very differently. They don't just go, oh, that variocannal plastic crate, the soft-sided crate, and the wire crate are all crates. I don't want to go in any of them. Now, some dogs
Right.
will do that. Dogs with separation anxiety, being confined is terrifying for them.
Yeah.
So any box that you're putting them in is scary. Just being alone is
Yeah.
scary, but the more confined they are, it's scary. But in this case, it could very well be it's he got his foot caught in the metal crate, so it's scary. It
Yeah.
made noise one time when he went in because that plastic tray slid in. It was scary. It could be he traveled in that to get here, and that was scary. So
Right.
he can't tell us why it makes him uncomfortable, but there's something about it that he's not sure of, and
Yep.
that we do know. So you can either abandon the metal crate altogether and just use the soft-sided one, or you can keep working on the metal crate. The soft-sided crates are great. I have one. I only use it once in a while when I'm traveling because it's a little bit easier to
Yeah.
utilize. Um, and it's also easier that, like when I used to do agility, it was just easier because you could fold the sides down and zip them closed instead of also having a blanket and fidgeting with that.
Yeah.
So, um, so you can just use that. My only thing with the soft-sided crates is, and this is just a personal thing, is sometimes I feel like they're kind of warm because there's not a lot of airflow.
Okay.
And so, but you open the sides, it's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
um, I know people who use the soft-sided crates instead of a regular crate, so there's no wrong way to use a crate. Um,
Yeah.
the wire ones are just always a little bit easier because, well, we could see our dogs clearly through them. The dogs
Yep.
can see out through them, and it's got a lot more airflow.
Yeah.
Some dogs like the plastic Varia kennels. I actually got rid of all my Varia kennels. I used to have one, and first of all, it's not easy to store because it's two pieces of plastic that you've got to, even if you take it apart, you still have half. You put the other side inverted inside the one part, and it's still a big piece. And most of the dogs, they would use it because we taught them about it, but it wasn't something that you were going to take with you to travel easily because, well, you're not holding that anywhere and putting it down. It takes up a lot of room in your car. And I just like being able to see the dogs where they're in the crate if I'm
Yep.
checking in on them. So I actually got rid of my Varia kennel a long, long time ago. Now some dogs like the Varia kennel. So I know somebody today who is bringing a very, very, very shy dog up from Georgia. That dog will probably prefer a Varia kennel because it's a lot more enclosed and the dog doesn't feel so exposed.
Yeah.
But we still use a wire crate a lot of times because then we just throw a blanket over it to help them. So
Yep.
yeah, so you could keep working on that wire crate, or you could say, you know what, he's great in here, it's not a big deal. Or you can still work on that wire crate and say, you know, I want to help him be comfortable with some of his fears. So we're just going to continue to work on that and see how he does. And then if 2 weeks from now you say, you know what, forget it, then you forget it then. So that's definitely up to you what you'd like to do on that.
Okay.
Great. Excellent. So I wasn't sure if Tanya was going to be able to join us today or
No,
not.
she texted me she had something come out at work
Okay.
and she's not gonna be able to join.
Okay, great. Not a problem. I just figured I'd wait till we got started on some of the new stuff. All right, perfect. So what we're going to do today is we are going to start laying some foundation work for some of the really important skills that people struggle with their dogs. And that is loose leash walking and coming when called. So
Yep.
with this part of the program, we actually get to set some foundation work for it. Whereas if somebody takes basic good manners, we just jump right in. There's no foundation work. There's not enough time. So we're going to start setting some foundation work, which is really going to help by the time we get to loose leash walking and coming when called, because you'll have this great foundation. People are always very excited when they see how well my dogs come when called and how they always will come near me and they're do really well on leash. Well, that's because I put in all this effort, and I don't even like to call it effort. When my puppies come home, I just play with them in the yard. They don't know what kind of game I'm playing. To them, it's just a
Right.
fun game. They have no
Right.
idea that it's actually helping with skills later on. Because to them, I've just made this fun thing out in the yard.
Right.
So when I do get to the point where I'm going to start working on that skill, I have such a great foundation. I'm really not putting a lot of effort into it. With Toast, I don't remember exerting any effort whatsoever to really teach her any of those skills, just because we play these games so much. By the time I got to them, I did very little work, which is fantastic because I don't really want extra stuff to do in the course of a day. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And I will say, loose leash walking used to be, in the past, before I came up with the system, was my least favorite thing to do with dogs because it was so much work. But I have this whole new system in place that I've learned over the years by trial and error that now it's just easy as breezy. You can kind of, I say it's kind of one of those training without trying things. So what we're going to do is, and this is all going to be in your instruction sheets, one of the things that I want you guys to do when you're outside with him. Now, do you guys have a fenced in yard? I can't remember.
No, we do
You
not.
don't have a fenced in yard. Okay. So what I would like for you guys to do is to get a long line if you don't already have one. And that long line is that it looks like a nylon leash. It comes in all sorts of lengths, 20, 25 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. Just get like that 20 or 25 footer. That's all you need. That way, when you take him out in the yard, you could still play with him also, because you could throw the ball. I also call it a drag line sometimes. He could drag it around. So you could throw a ball. That line is 25 feet. You could still throw that ball 40 feet, 30 feet, and then you just kind of walk after him because you can grab the end of the leash if you need to. So he gets a lot of freedom with that line. Now, if he's a dog that is not really interested in staying around and he's really curious, you're not going to want to let go of that end of the leash. And that's sometimes how we start off with some dogs. Some dogs, we're like, you know what, can't let that go because one thing that gets their attention and they're going to run off. So we just hold the end of the leash, but they still have this huge space to run and play in. So what you're going to do when you have that is, when you're out in your yard, you're going to let him meander around however he wants. And every time he comes back to you, you're just going to reward him with a high value treat. You're not going to call him to come because he doesn't know the word yet. Right now, all we're going to do is associate being by you makes awesome stuff happen. So when we start teaching come when called, it's going to be a no-brainer. He's going to want to come by you. Now, you can do various things to get his attention, except call the word come. So you can say, or all sorts of things.
Right.
I can go outside, I can make any sound whatsoever. My dogs will come. I could just go out and go, hey. And even if I say, hey, they'll look at me and all I have to do is go, and they come running. But don't say the word come because we don't want to mess that up right now. The whole thing is we want him to get used to paying attention to you outside and thinking that when you make that noise, he should come over because something awesome happens. So every time you're outside playing with him, even if you're playing ball and he comes back and he brings you the ball, give him a high value reward for bringing that ball back to you. We're rewarding for bringing the ball back to us, but it's also the whole back to us part that we're rewarding. This is going to set
Right.
a really good foundation work. You're outside with your dog anyway. Anytime my dog, Toast, anytime she was outside in the yard and she'd pee over there, anytime
Yeah.
she was done peeing, I would make some silly sounds. She'd run up to me. I'd give her a high value reward. I would be outside in the yard and I would be scooping up poop from my dogs. And if she's over here meandering around, I would make some silly noise, get her over to me, and I would reward. So we could just be playing in the yard. I would just sit there and I'd let her meander around. And then I would make random noises and she'd come over and I would give her a high value reward. So she would get faster and faster at this because in the beginning she'd look around and then I'd make fun noises. And of course she was curious, so she'd run over. But the more we played this, the less excited I had to be. So instead of being, hi, what you doing? What you doing? Like, over here, you know, making silly sounds to encourage her to come, I could just make little sounds like, and she'd come bolting over. So every time you're out in the yard, spend some time throughout the day doing this. When you're out playing, taking out to potty, just, you know, hanging out on the deck or patio, whatever it is that you're doing, find time several times a day to play that silly game. Reward him for being around you. That's going to be really helpful for coming when called and for polite leash walking. So we're going to do some stuff indoors to help set the foundation for polite leash walking. So I'm going to have you grab your goodies and we're going to put you guys to work today.
Right. Okay. All right. All
Great.
right. Yes, I do have some goodies. That's right.
Excellent. And so what we're going to do is I am going to have you position the camera down so I can see. I'm going to have you guys walk a few steps on our on one of our tasks that we're going to do today. So you can just position it down so I can see you and him, because at first we're going to work on name game and then we're going to work on taking some steps. So I think the way it's set up is actually pretty good. As long as it's a little bit lower, I can see straight ahead if you walk into the kitchen. So that would work out great. Perfect. And so all we're going to do to start is we're going to start with name game. Name game is basically the premise to pretty much anything we want to do with our dogs. In order to get our dog's attention, we have to be able to get their name first. So if our dog is out in the yard or on a walk and there's something distracting them, if we want to get their attention on us and ask them to do something, first we've got to get them to look at us. So if we can get them to say their name and say Fido, and our dog looks at us, now we can ask them to do a skill that we've taught them. So if my dogs are out in the yard and they're at the very end of the yard, I don't want to just walk outside and yell, come, because they may or may not hear me in that moment. If they're so busy trying to see the deer that's running through the woods or the fox that's on the other side of the fence, I can't just go outside and say whatever word it is that I want them to do, because they're likely not going to hear me because I don't have their attention. It's very similar if you go to a dinner party and there's a bunch of people at your house or you're at somebody else's house. Let's say you're talking to somebody and you can't remember the name of a restaurant that you went to. And so, you know, you're on one side of the living room talking and Tanya's on the other side of the living room talking. And there's a lot of noise with everyone talking. And you just say, hey, what was the name of that restaurant that we went to last week? She's likely not going to know you're talking to her because she's distracted. Right. So she's not ignoring you. She just doesn't know that you're trying to get her attention. But if you said, hey, Tanya, and she looked, and then you asked her the name of the restaurant, now she can answer you because you have her focus. So it's similar with dogs. If they're out and they're really intrigued in something in the environment, we often can't just ask them to do what we want them to do because, you know, they're so focused on whatever it is that's got their attention. So name game is going to be really important. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to charge a word that we're going to use to mark the behavior that we like. Now, we've started doing this a little bit with his crate, but I want to get a little bit more of a foundation down for him on what that word yes means. So all I'm going to have you do is say the word yes in a happy tone. So it's acting as a marker, and then reward him. So it's going to be yes. Then we reach in and grab a reward. Yes. And then reach and grab a reward. So it's word, then the treat appears. And the reason we do it this way is because when we're teaching our dog things, we want them to know that when we say yes, that means they got it right and their paycheck is coming. Because if we're teaching our dog to sit and we just ask them to sit and we're so excited that they did it, if we don't tell them in that second that what they did was correct and we want to reward them for it. So I say sit, my dog sits, but now I don't say anything like yes. I reach in my pocket or my training pouch to get my treat. By the time I fumble around as a clumsy human, my dog might have laid down. Now I give them the treat. So I'm actually rewarding them for the laying down and not the sit that I was so excited that we did. If I ask my dog to sit and I fumble around for my treat and the mailman or UPS pulls in the driveway and my dog barks and runs to the door and then I give my treat, I've now rewarded barking and running to the door. Right. So we want to make sure that we mark our dogs the second they do what we want them to do, that we're asking them, showing them, then reward them so they can make the association. This is going to help them learn quicker. So all you're going to do is yes and treat. I'm going to have you do that 8 times.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Yes. 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 I think that was 8. Was that 8?
Yeah, that's about 8. Good. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to have you stand up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can make a noise to have him turn away from you. And when he does, I'm going to have you say yes. And I'm going to see if he swings his head back to you. So
okay, hold on. I might have to take you off speaker. I mean, I have my ear pods in.
Okay.
So he's not going to be distracted.
Okay.
I know I've got more treats coming.
So I'm going to make a little noise and then I'm just going to have you make sure that you keep your treat hidden so he doesn't watch your hands, because they always get very intrigued when they're like, what are those hands doing? All right. So when he's distracted, see about saying the word yes. So let me try that again.
Let me turn it up just a little.
Okay. So I'm going to make a sound, and he's actually a little distracted now. So now that he's not, when he's not looking at you, what I'm going to have you do is say the word yes and see if he pops his head around. So try it now.
Yes.
Good. Go ahead and reward him for that. Excellent. Good. So I'm going to distract him again.
Yes.
Did he look that time? I couldn't see if he looks. Good. Excellent. Good. So I think he's got it. Sometimes we just need to do it about a half a dozen times, and sometimes we might need to do it 15 or 20 times for the dog to start making the association. So I'm going to distract him again. Go ahead.
Yes.
Nice. Beautiful. Good. I think he's got it. And of course, as we do it, it's going to be even more of a connection because it's going to become more solid in that moment. Like, oh, okay. Excellent. So now we're going to do name game. Name game is pretty simple. All we're going to do is say his name, and every time he looks at you, you're going to say yes and give him a treat. Now, if he doesn't look when you say his name, we don't want to repeat it because we want to make sure he does the things that we teach him the first time, every time. So if I can't get my dog's attention the first time when I say his name, that actually doesn't help me, because let's say our dog runs outside and we're trying to get them to come. If I have to yell his name 6 times, he's going to be gone before I can even get his attention to even try to call him to come. So the first time, every time is really important. The more we say our cues, the less valuable they become. So if we repeat them over and over and over again to our dogs start saying, well, it's not really important because, come is a great example. A lot of people say come like 14 times to get their dog to come, and the dog may or may not come. What the dog is learning is sometimes I come, sometimes I don't. It's not very important. Also, if we repeat our cues, especially with things like sit or down, and we say sit, 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 and then the dog sits, the cue might actually become eventually sit, which is different than sit. Also, if we say it repeatedly, the dog goes, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to sit the first time. I thought I was supposed to sit the 4th or 5th time. I don't really know the rules of the game. So we want to be really consistent and make sure we keep our skills that we're teaching our dog really sharp. So he's going to be focused on you. And so I'm going to try to get his attention, and then you're going to say his name.
Elliot.
Nice. Make sure you give him that yes as soon as he looks to you. And again, if he doesn't look, we're not going to repeat it. We're just going to make a sound like, something to get him to look in our direction, because we want him, if he doesn't look, to go, ooh, I really should pay attention because I might miss out if I don't.
Yes.
Nice. Good boy.
Elliot.
Nice. Yeah. He's like, I don't know what's with the talkie box behind me. Boop, 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 boop.
Elliot.
Nice. Yeah. Good. Very good. Excellent. So you're going to keep practicing this. This is going to be really easy inside because, well, there's not a lot of distractions. They're usually focused in watching what we're doing to begin with. This is going to be harder outside. I like to look at it as this is kindergarten right in here. Everything in your house that you do is kindergarten. It's the easiest level. There's very low distractions. You're always competing with the environment when you teach your dog new skills. When you go in your backyard, that's like grade school. Now there's distractions out there. There's squirrels in the tree, hot air balloons going by, the sounds of traffic, garbage trucks, anything outside. The grass alone is distracting for dogs to sniff. It's going to be a little bit harder. You might have to use a little bit more of the, to entice him to look outside. That's going to be trickier. When you go in your front yard, it's not the same thing as your backyard, because depending on where you live, there is some sort of other distractions in the front yard. Even if you live on a more remote road, there's still some joggers that are going to go by. There's still different smells in the front yard. There's still cars that are going to go by. So that is going to be like grade school. And the busier of your neighborhood, the harder it's going to be. Once you put them on a leash and you go for a walk, you're now looking at high school, because now they can see what's going on everywhere in the neighborhood, and there's tons more distractions. They can smell Mr. and Mrs. Smith's cat that was, walking over here. They can see the other dogs on property. There's another dog barking. There's somebody doing lawn maintenance. There's kids playing basketball in the driveway. These are all major distractions, so it's going to be much, much harder to get his attention. Once you put him in the car and you go somewhere else, that's like grad school. That's really, really hard because these are all new environments to him. So there's always something really awesome to investigate, because it's just not the same old thing like his house or the backyard. So that's going to be a lot harder. I often hear people say, oh, he's ignoring me. He's not listening. He's being spiteful. That's not true. What it means is we just didn't teach our dog to do that skill in that difficult environment. There's all these different levels of difficulty. And if we don't work with our dogs in those different environments, they can't learn it to the expert level that we really want them to. I like to equate it to, if we drive down the road on a nice day, we've got the music going and we're just, buzzing along, doing our errands or whatever. But if it's snowing and it might be a little icy, or if the rain is coming down and it's pummeling us, sometimes we have to turn that radio down or we have to turn it off because it's distracting to us. You know, I remember when my daughter was living at home when she was younger, we were driving somewhere, the weather was bad, and I turned the radio off. And she said, "Why'd you turn it off?" I said, "I need to concentrate." It shouldn't be that hard, right? Listen to music and drive all the time. But because of these other elements that were happening, it made what I was doing harder. And I needed to really focus on the road. The dogs can't turn off the nature like we can turn off the radio. So we have to teach them to work through all of that. So it's kind of like us having to work through listening to the radio really loud or that book on tape while the road is icy or the rain is pummeling and we can't see through the windshield. We expect our dogs to be able to do these things through all those distractions. But in order to do it, we've got to practice that way. I love his little ears. They're so cute. the way they bend over.
Oh,
So, yeah. So just keep that in mind. It's not that he's ignoring you or blowing you off when you go somewhere. He just doesn't know how to do it to that degree of difficulty. So we've got to just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. You know, if he sits great in the kitchen, we can't expect him to sit at the farm because there's too many distractions. We've got to teach him to sit that way. Excellent. So the other exercise that we're going to do, I call it follow the leader. There's part 1 and part 2. This is where we're going to start getting him to associate that being near you makes a good thing happen and is going to be our great foundation for loose leash walking. So I'm going to have you get some goodies, and you'll go through quite a few when you practice this exercise because we're basically going to reward every single step we take. So I'm going to have you get some goodies. You're going to keep them in your right hand, and you're going to have them hidden either on your side or a little bit behind your back. We don't want to hold them out in front of us because he's going to see them there and he's going to want to cut us off to come get them. Oh boy.
Now you tell them what I can have, right?
They know the sounds of all their goodies once they Cooper is blind, and if I open up a particular cabinet in the house where I keep all his stuff, he comes running. He knows it's his cabinet. There are, I don't know, there's a ton of cabinets in our kitchen, but he knows where I am when I open up a specific cabinet, and he will come running. Dogs are brilliant. We don't nearly give them enough credit for everything. All right. So what we're going to do is you're going to have those in your right hand. We're going to get him up, and we're going to have him on your left side.
Come on.
Like, I'm pretty comfy.
Come on.
Yeah, the step might be a little bit of a challenge. Got to go all the way up, buddy. There you go. Good. Now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you take one step forward, and when he follows you and he's right by your side, you're going to reward him by taking your left hand and taking a treat from your right hand and then delivering it straight down your leg and reward him by your knee. And the reason we're rewarding him on the side of your knee is because when we do loose leash walking, we want our dog to walk on the side of us. We don't want them to walk in front of us and cut us off. So if we reward in front of us, that's going to become the reward zone. You might have to bend down just a smidgen with your knees to get his attention. There we go. And go ahead and reward one step. And then if you have to bend down with your knees a little bit to encourage him, you can. There we go. And reward, and then one step, and repeat. And he's going to do this slow in the beginning because he has no idea about this game. This game is brand new to him, so he's going to have to figure it out. So he's like, I don't know what we're doing. Now, if you have to, let's go back to him a little bit. Get him back on your left side. Why don't you toss a treat on the floor so he has to get up? That'll help you out a little bit because he's comfy. Good. Good. Now take a step, just one, and have him follow. Put your hand down if you need to. He's so cute. Good. One step. And then try to make some fun sounds to encourage him. Good. And then again. And then you could do that the whole way back to me when you turn around. Nice. Good. Good. He did that one all on his own. And that one too. Good. He's like, oh, okay, I think I'm getting this game. Good job, buddy. Nice. Good. And we only start with one step at a time because you see how challenging it is. The dog has no idea about this silly game that we're playing. Good job. And you can actually stay up on the landing if you want, since the landing is usually a tricky for most dogs because it's hard for them just to take the one step up. Good. And then I'm going to have you do that again. Back to the microwave and then back to me. Nice. Good boy. Nice. Lovely.
Other side.
Now you can put the treat close to his nose and then guide him over by moving it slowly, and then just move it slowly, slowly. Good. What a good boy. Good job. And if you have to, you can always make a few little or to get him to come. That's okay because he's figuring it out. What a good boy. Excellent. So you're going to keep practicing this. You're going to just work on this one step at a time until he's doing it very fluently. You know, see how he's hesitating right now? He doesn't know. He's only done it, you know, how many steps around the kitchen each time? So maybe 20 times, 25 times. So we want to get to the point where you take that step and he's basically still walking with you. There's no hesitation. He's like, oh, gotta go. I gotta catch up. I gotta be there. Once he's doing that, you can then add another step. So it's like walking 2 steps and then reinforcing, walking 2 steps and then reinforcing. The other part of this is part 2, follow the leader part 2. This is going to help with polite leash walking as well as coming when called. What we're going to do is we're going to drop a little pile of goodies and then we're going to run away. So what I'll have you do is drop a little bit right wherever he lands. So if he's there, just drop a few, then run towards the microwave. So this is going to keep him away while he's eating. And then when he's done eating, encourage him to catch up to you by making some fun sounds. But we have to wait for him to finish making sure he got all his goodies first because that's a big distraction.
Good.
Nice. And then reward him when he gets there. Good. Now, when you play this game, it's a little helpful if when you do it, if he's over here and you run forward, stay. If you might have to turn to face him to encourage him, but when he catches up, turn so you reinforce him on your left side like you were when you were walking. And it's okay if you don't do that. It's not going to mess anything up. Sometimes I reward when they come straight to me. Sometimes I reward on the left. I try to remember to reward on the left, but I'm more concerned about getting the dog to come running to me than I am about making sure it's always on the left side. So it's not going to mess anything up if you do it both ways. But if you can, when he starts running towards you, just turn around so he ends up on your left side and reward him over there. So now you're going to drop another pile of goodies for him to eat there, and then you're just going to run back towards his crate. And our goal is when he's done eating, there we go. When he's done eating, we want him to be, I better take off and come catch up to my person. So in the beginning, we might have to encourage him. But as he's playing this more, when we drop those pile of goodies, right now we probably don't have to run as much. We can kind of saunter off. But as he gets better at it, we are going to need to drop and run because they're going to eat quickly and they're going to want to catch up to us because they get rewarded when they do. So this is part of the game. You're going to play this inside where there's low distractions, and you're going to play this outside where there's higher distractions. So that long line will come in really handy for this because you'll have at least 20 to 25 feet of space to play this game with him. Now, when you play it outside and you're starting, you're not going to want to use the whole length of the long line. That's too far to expect him to come with all the distractions. Because if he's 25 feet away from you, there's a lot between you and him that he can get distracted by. So I usually suggest running maybe 6 or 7 feet and then encouraging him to come, and then another 6 or 7 feet. When he gets good at it, then you can add more distance and then go from 6 or 7 feet to 10 feet away. When he gets great at 10 feet away, then make it 15 feet away. Because if we just try to do this from really far across the yard, a million things could happen between him leaving that pile of goodies when he's done eating and catching up to you. There could be a squirrel that gets his attention. There could be a deer. There could be something in the woods. Anything that veers him off to another direction instead of to you. So we want to make it easy so he can get it right by just asking him to do it for a short distance. Inside, you can definitely do it longer because there's not as many distractions. So any questions on name game or both versions of follow the leader?
No, they seem like really relatively straightforward games.
Yeah, they're really easy games. And again, your dog has no idea that these are important things. These are what I played with Toast in the yard and all my other puppies in the yard to get them to start running to come to me. Again, I put hardly any effort into teaching my dogs to come when called, because from the moment they came home, I started making being near me in the yard a pretty darn good thing. So when I finally did get to those skills after, working all these puppy dilemmas of the chewing and the housebreaking and the crate training and all of that, and working on some other easy skills like sit and whatnot, by the time I got to the harder stuff, my dogs already had a great foundation because they weren't just doing their own thing before I got to that skill. They weren't just meandering around the yard and quote unquote ignoring me. We just made being in the backyard fun by playing these silly games. So I wasn't wasting, so to speak, for lack of a better word, wasting all that time I was outside for several weeks. I was doing something to make it work to my advantage for later down the road. Excellent. He did really good. And you saw in the beginning, he's like, I don't even get this game. He was hesitant to take a step. He kind of would sit. But then once he caught on that, when I catch up to my person, good stuff happens. Then you took another step and he was a little bit more willing to move forward. He's like, oh, wait, I'm getting this game. So he's already starting to get it. Excellent. Great job, Mr. Elliott.
Two questions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I guess, how critical that all members of the family do it? I'm assuming it's critical, right? Just so he associates kind of the reward feedback mechanism with everybody that's in the house. And then I guess the second piece would be, at some point, right? I mean, there's a transition from he's getting some kind of treat every time to getting praise and then just become a kind of the second nature.
Yep, it will eventually become muscle memory when we do stuff. But when we're first teaching our dogs to do things, we do a really high rate of reinforcement because dogs do what works and dogs want to know what's in it for them. They don't do things because, they want to please us. That's a misconception. The way dogs do things is what's in it for me. I'll use come as an example. Why should I come when you call me? What's in it for me? I'm outside having a good time. You call me to come. What do I get to do? Lay on the couch.
Right.
So if a dog is enjoying themselves outside, rolling around in the grass, checking out the nature, sniffing, eating deer poop, they don't want to come when we call them because it's no fun once they come inside. It's boring. So we do these things where we reward high value and we make it worth their while. So we make that association that, coming when called is better than squirrels. Coming when called is better than deer poop. It then just becomes second nature. So we don't have to reward them every time, all the time. And when we get to working on the skills, we're going to talk about random reinforcement and all of that good stuff and how we fade these rewards out. But we've got to reward heavy and well in the beginning in order to get that behavior to become a habit for our dog. With regards to all members of the family, I always suggest everybody help out. Now, there always tends to be at least one person in the house who's doing the majority of the training, and that's okay. But we want to make sure everybody else is consistent. So even if some of the other people aren't doing as much training, we want to make sure that they're consistent when they are interacting with the dog. So a good example is I had a client one year when we were doing sit stay, instead of using okay as a release word, he decided to use a different word, which is fine, but his wife didn't know what it was. So the dog was confused because the dog didn't know what to do because the dog was being told two different things. And so it was harder for the dog to learn, and they were thinking it wasn't working. It's just that the dog had no idea. The dog is trying to speak English, and as far as he knows, now somebody's speaking to him in French and Spanish. He had no idea. It was just too confusing. So we want to be consistent. And I always suggest that everybody get involved with the training, even though they might not be the main person in the house who's doing the training, because dogs are terrible generalizers. If you only ever work with your dog will probably do things for you pretty stellar. And he might do it okay for other people because, well, one, there's not a bond. When you're doing these things with your dog, you start developing a bond. You become your dog's great source of stuff. Whereas if somebody else asks your dog to do it, unless they know it really, 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 really well, they might not do it because there's really no relationship with that person. So getting everybody to help out forms a bond with everybody. And it really does help the dog know that I'm supposed to do it no matter who asks me to do it. So the more people that work with our dog, the dog goes, oh, I'm not supposed to just sit for dad. I'm also supposed to sit for mom and my skin brother and sisters. So I've seen that happen over time where there's other people in the house. Many years ago, I had a family that the daughter was not a dog person at all. And the family got a dog and everybody loved this puppy. The daughter could basically care less about this puppy. The puppy really didn't do anything for her. There was no relationship at all. Now, as time went on, she started to work with the puppy and she loved the puppy. They never had a dog before. And for some reason, she just wasn't into the puppy. And now they have this great relationship, but she would get mad because the puppy wouldn't do anything for her, but there was zero relationship between them. It's not even that she didn't train with the puppy. She actually didn't really even interact with the puppy very much. So the puppy really didn't want anything to do with her. So even though the puppy knew all these skills really well, if she's asked him to do something, he was kind of like, because there was no love between the two of them. So, she started working with him and they have this great bond now. She even has an Instagram page. I found out, he's about 4 or 5 now. I found out this past year or so, she started an Instagram page for him. He's got his own page. So she did a total 180 on that from that puppy came home.
Good.
Good. Very good. So let me know if you have any questions or challenges as you're working through this. We have another session tomorrow, so we can certainly check in on that. If you get stuck, or if you get stuck before then, let me know, and I'll help work you through it.
All right, great. So when you're talking about, like, these are just the expandable leashes, right? They have like the big handle.
Nope, those are flexi leads. We don't want one of those. I'm not a big fan of flexi leads. There are people who've lost fingertips because of those, because when the dog runs and that cord goes really fast, it just kind of right through. My daughter actually got hurt on a flexi lead 8 years ago. She was somewhere. Somebody had their dog on a flexi lead. The dog saw a squirrel and took off on the flexi lead, undoes all of that, clotheslined my daughter from behind. Her ankles were all ripped open. They were so gross. And she basically got flipped over. Her elbow was all bruised. Her shoulder was all bruised. It wasn't even her dog. It was somebody else's dog who took off. So those I don't love because they can be a little bit dangerous. The long lines look like a long nylon leash. So it's got the handle on the end, just like a regular nylon leash. It's just not 6 feet. It just comes in all those different lengths. You can make your own with a rope and a lobster claw clasp. But I'm not good at tying knots, so I just buy them. And again, they come in all different lengths. So Barclays and Flemington has them available. And I'm sure some of the other pet stores do. I know Barclay has them. I was just there the other day to see if he had a nice stash of them, because when I suggest them, they tend to come off the shelves and then they have to replenish the stock. So like the one day I went in to get a new long line because one of mine was getting old, and from using it so much and it was a lot of rain, it would get wet and dry, wet and dry, wet and dry. Over the years, it started to, I feel, get compromised. So I went to go in and get another one day, and he didn't have any. He said, "No, I got them coming in." So he goes, your people came in and bought the last of them. I said, "All right." So yeah, and you can just order them on Amazon if you can't get somewhere as well. So If you just Google long line, you'll find them. They come in different lengths. They come in different widths as well. A lot of times you find the 5/8. 1 inch is hard to find, but they are out there. But it's just a nice big long nylon leash. That's it.
Okay.
Excellent. Very good. If you have any questions on it, let me know. I'll Google it and send you a link to it as well and what they look like.
No, as long as, yeah, I just want to make sure that we're picking up the right thing.
Yep. Excellent. All right, then. I will see you guys tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good day. It's dark. Have a good day. Bye.